Welcome to Everyday Ethics, everybody. I'm your host, Michael Liebowitz, joined today by the great Mark Pellegrino. Sorry I'm a little bit late. I had to clear up some storage on my computer. Mark is sweating to death in France, so please excuse the fan in the background. Today, we're going to discuss the importance of principles. Now, Leonard Peikoff defined a principle as a fundamental truth upon which others depend. I don't take issue with that. A principle is a generalization. It's bringing a lot of things under one unit, a lot of different concrete situations, ideas, whatever, under a specific unit. And in the case of ethics, we do this so that we can guide our behavior. So, for instance, I understand the principle of honesty. This subsumes every instance of honesty that has ever taken place, that ever will take place. And we know that honesty promotes human well-being. And so that is what a principle is, basically. Mark, do you take issue with my explanation of what a principle is? And did you share this from X?
I just did, as a matter of fact. That's what I was looking down at. I take no issue with your definition so far.
All right, so what got me thinking about this was Sheldon Richman's article about Auberon Herbert talking about the importance of principle. So I actually went to Claude and I asked Claude to explain what were the strongest arguments for and what were the strongest arguments against living and thinking in principle. And I'm just going to go find this real quickly. I want to... Now it screwed me. Okay, here it goes again. So what it argued, or what it stated, were the benefits of principle. Let me go back here. It says cognitive economy, which basically means you don't have to, you unite everything under one word, one principle, one concept. It also talks about protection against in-the-moment distortion, consistency and integrity, long-range orientation, which all those things are good. But I want to talk about, Mark, some of the criticisms of it. So the critiques they gave of it are rigidity, motivated reasoning, basically that we're giving over our thinking to rules. What do you think about that? What, in your mind, what is the difference between a rule and a principle? You got to unmute yourself, Holmes.
Thank you very much. Yeah, to me, a rule is a potentially arbitrary dictate that you follow irrespective of context, irrespective of your own life. But a principle should be rooted in observation. So you should be able to reduce a principle, which is a sum of knowledge, to the observational reality. And so, and it also does not separate itself from your context. Since for an ethical principle, for example, your life as a rational being is the context within which virtues matter and within which values matter. So the principle is measurable, it's relatable to objective reality. The rule is something arbitrary that you follow, not connected to reality necessarily, certainly not connected to your life as a value.
Right. So we live in with a hierarchy of principles that exist in a context. We're not rule followers. We're not deontologists like Immanuel Kant. Be honest in all conditions, even if it's going to cost you or your loved ones their lives. Turn over the Jews to the Nazis if you have to, because honesty is an out-of-context rule or duty. Now, it says that the strongest case for principles is epistemic and protective. The strongest case against rigid principle following is contextual and perceptual. Reality is richer than any finite rule set. So what I did was I said to Claude, I said, it seems that your conception of principles is deontological and rule following. Is this an accurate depiction of your view? If so, how does this differ from the objectivist conception of principles? And it says that's a fair and sharp critique. It says it is not my view though it concedes that my previous answer did lean too heavily on deontological model. And let me correct and sharpen the distinction. It says that in laying out the case for principles, I structured the argument in a way that implicitly centered the Kantian conception, principles as rules you follow because they are rules. And I mean, it did a really good job of differentiating the objectivist concept, but I don't want to just sit here and read all that. I really want to talk about, Mark, the need of principles in my life. So, for instance, I have plans tonight to meet my friend for coffee, right? So I told my friend, I'll meet you around 4 o'clock for coffee. He said, that might be a little bit earlier or too early, but let's shoot for then, right? So, okay. My fundamental principle, like you said, is my own life. My values, my enjoyment. I enjoy my friend is a value to me. Drinking coffee is a value to me, and being honest is a value to me. These are all principles that I incorporate. Not coffee drinking, but my own enjoyment, the importance of friendship to my own well-being, and the importance of honesty. So now I don't have to ask myself between now and 4 o'clock, should I show up? Should I keep my word? I know to do it because I'm governing my life by principle. Similarly, tomorrow at 12 noon, I have a podcast scheduled to do, Capitalist Corner Weekend. My long-term purpose is to, gain wealth and notoriety from doing podcasts and getting out messages that I think are important. It's also, again, the honesty, keeping my word to both Megan Ribbons, to Persephone, to the audience. So I don't have to keep questioning till tomorrow, should I show up? Should I do this? Am I demonstrating, Mark? I want to make sure for the audience, and the audience can tell me, am I being clear about the importance of principle and how they help not going concrete by concrete?
Yeah, I would say you are.
All right. So what are some of your principles, Mark, that you act on?
Honesty is a huge principle for me. I think it is for any serious objectivist, primarily because your contact with reality is important, and the more clear you are about reality, the better life you will have, even though some of that information may be painful to you and urge you in the direction of change. It usually is all good and for the betterment of your life. Integrity is super important to me because I need to be consistent with respect to my principles. And when you interact with people and people know you have integrity, they know you're a moral human being, that morality is important to you. And so you don't have anything to prove because you've proven it by successive acts and a history of being consistent and practicing your principles. And I believe that you should practice your principles in your life. They shouldn't be floating abstractions. They shouldn't be performative. It should be what you do in your life. And that lends itself, again, to selfish pursuit. For me, it gives me a great deal of pride to know that I'm acting consistently. It gives me a great deal of pride to know that I see reality as clearly as I'm capable of seeing it. And because I'm honest and because I have integrity, I change. If new information comes my way, and my opinion is based on something erroneous, it's in my best interest to change it. One of the reasons I never got so bent out of shape, Michael, when teachers would correct me in acting class, for example, other people would be ruined by it. I wasn't, because if their correction was constructive, if it was true, it made me better. So to me, falling down, not doing well, jiu-jitsu right now, I'm in a sort of a stuck mode right now. That's good because it's forcing me to challenge my premises, change my game, get a little bit uncomfortable, and start advancing. That's the only way you do it. And I live by that principle of putting yourself in discomfort, not the kind of discomfort that's just, the way a priest would look at it, or a saint, where you're supposed to mortify your flesh, but discomfort that you challenge your boundaries all the time, that you're constantly learning, that you're constantly pushing outwards. to me, that's a type of principle in that I live that way and constantly learn, constantly change, and it keeps me young inside, even though I may be getting older outside. And I also try to the best of my ability to be a rational human being. Yeah, go ahead. Did you want to interrupt there? Go ahead.
Not really, but I will anyways. So, now, obviously, you mentioned your own self-interest because you and I both live by an ethic of egoism, specifically Ayn Rand's objectivist ethics. And Ayn Rand identified, now, the principles that she identified, it's important that these aren't deduced from axioms. They aren't rationalistic constructions. They're generalizations from experience based on innumerable concretes and what works to promote individual human well-being. So rationality, that's the primary virtue, but we also have productiveness, honesty, integrity, justice, independence, and pride. And she's, in my view, demonstrated that these are the principles that, if you live by, maximize your chance of success. Now, when we go off the air today, I'm actually going to post my interaction with Claude. I'll post it to both Facebooks and X so everybody can read for yourself. I thought it was very good. Anyways, but remember, this is the Rational Alternative channel. If you're joining us from X, please check us out, the Rational Alternative on YouTube. We have numerous shows: Everyday Ethics, Capitalist Corner, Crime, Corrections, and Culture, Capitalist Corner Weekends. We also have special content for members. Now, the opposite mark of the principled life in philosophy would be pragmatism. Pragmatism is a concrete-bound philosophy. Basically, every new concrete scenario that you find yourself in might require a different approach. So trying to apply a principle to that just won't work. Now, in pragmatism, you actually, it's based on experimentation. So you try out and then you know what works afterwards. How that's useful as a guide to action, I don't know. I do know that when I was a criminal, and not all pragmatists are criminals, so nobody accuse me of making that saying, but in essence, that's what I was, is every situation, this is how I'm going to behave now. I was whim-ridden and emotion-ridden. It was all based on the values that I adopted subconsciously growing up, and I ended up in prison. Now, not everybody has to end up in prison, but if that's the way you're going to live your life, you are going to end up with a nimity of problems. Mark, did you ever live like a pragmatist, or do you know pragmatists in your life, and how does that work out?
I think I did live that way at one time. As an actor, as an artist, you're actually encouraged to live that way. Acting teachers predominantly, they tell you one big message that you get as an actor: don't think. Thinking is anathema to you. It mars the creative process. You're supposed to touch that animal thing inside you, that animal essence inside of you that civilization crushes, right? It's sort of Rousseauian in that respect, that it believes in the noble savage, and that primitive inside of you is the more authentic you, and you should tap that. It took me a long time to break away from that. I think that's terrible for actors and artists to cut off their heads in the name of art. I think that's probably why we see so much art that doesn't really pass as anything but an emotional detritus on a canvas, or it has no form. And yeah, I think a lot of people, in not just in Hollywood, but if you look on social media and you carry on discussions with people, certainly it's not necessarily an honest slice of the world, but a sizable enough one to make me think that pragmatism is sort of it's the nouveau concept that the sophisticates and elites think actually makes them smarter than you, because to their minds, each new circumstance should be treated as a discrete thing in and of itself. Wisdom that you and I might have gathered from Rand or Aristotle, it's irrelevant now. Those principles don't translate over into in Aristotle's case, the modern industrial age, or in Rand's case, whatever situation we happen to be finding ourselves, the new geopolitical, powers, juxtaposition of powers. And so they've given up principle in the name of dealing with each thing as a discrete thing in and of itself. And I don't really know a lot of principled people online. I certainly don't know many in my business who embrace principles across the board. They for them, they have principles. They'll have principles in some things, but they're adjustable, they're changeable, they can betray them at times. It's very situational, not contextual, in the way that we might have to. We can understand that honesty is a virtue based on what it means with respect to our contact with reality. Understand how important it is with respect to how we deal with other people, but also understand there may be a context under which assessing reality means we have to lie to somebody.
Right.
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 And so some people would see that as a pragmatic adjustment as opposed to a principled adjustment to reality, and with your life as a standard, determining certain factors that make you do that.
Right. Well, first of all, values are hierarchical, and the primary value is my own life, or your own life, right? So you don't then elevate a downward principle, not downward, down the chain, a principle above that which gives rise to it. So you don't tell the truth to your own detriment, but more clearly, the principle of honesty and objectivism is don't try to gain values by deceit. Now, protecting values by lying against an aggressor is the same as self-defense. But that actually, and by the way, we love super chats and super stickers over here. There's in objectivism, there's the ethics of emergencies. An emergency is a temporary, extreme situation that you might find yourself in. Maybe you've got a gun to your head, maybe you're drowning, maybe you're stranded, on an island, whatever. And the normal sort of moral principles may not apply in that situation. Your own life is still human life is still the standard of moral value, and your own life is what you need to apply that to. But the normal principles may not be there. But importantly, the situation has to be temporary so that you can return to the normal ethical considerations that you live by. Christopher Smith says, the best in any field are philosophical about their discipline, in my estimation. What do you think about that, Mark? As somebody who is a success in your field, is he right that the best in the field are philosophical about their discipline?
I don't know what he means by that. If he means they think about their particular discipline, yes, they do. They apply their rational faculty and a sense of truth to their work, for sure, and their rigor and a sense of logic. They're definitely rigorous about that in their work, but it doesn't necessarily translate into a holistic worldview. I find a lot of great actors who have basically, Michael, adopted pretty much every cultural and social bromide there is as their own, and they haven't really thought about it. They take those presumptions as the truth. They've never questioned them, and that's what serves as their moral school, so to speak. So when I hear them talk about politics, I hear them talk about their ideals, they're nothing more than just recycled altruistic bromides that I don't think they've thought much about. They certainly haven't applied the kind of critical thinking to to those ideas as they have to their script analysis, let's say. Yeah, but I don't know about philosophical. I don't know many philosophically minded actors, to be honest with you. They're good too. They're good.
Christopher Ian Gilmore says, "Hey, Mark isn't usually on this show." No, he's not. I dragged him over here because Persephone's out, and Mark was kind enough. It's like, what is it, 10 o'clock over there, Mark?
Almost 9.
Almost 9 p.m. He's doing me what's called in the industry a solid by joining me here today. So Christopher Smith says, honesty is important to your own consciousness. I couldn't agree more. That to me, aside from when I was at my lowest, the first thing was just a desire to be better, but also it was being honest with myself. Because in order to change a flaw, I have to recognize it as a flaw. In order to maintain integrity, I have to be willing to do what Mark says. Okay, yeah, I was wrong. I'll give you an example of when I was wrong yesterday. So yesterday was Thursday, and Diana had to go do something in the morning, and she said, and I wanted her to vacuum the basement. So she said, "Well, I have to go pick something up, and I have to go to the post office." And I forgot that she had to go to work in the afternoon. I was thinking she had the day off. And so I said to her, in kind of snappy, well, why does this have to get done right now? Why can't you vacuum? And she said, because I have to go to work. And I said, oh, you're right. I forgot. I'm sorry. Because I was wrong. I came to a conclusion that she could have put off going to the post office and vacuum because she had nothing to do. I forgot that she had to go to work. The second I realized she had to go to work, it was like, no, okay, I'm sorry. That's it. There was no digging in. There was no, well, yeah, but still, you could have done it. It was it. I was wrong. And I've trained myself to do that, whether it be philosophy opinions, economic opinions, moral opinions, opinions about my own behavior. When I'm wrong, I admit it. It's not something that I enjoy. I mean, I don't love like saying, damn, I was really wrong about this one here. The other day, I won't tell what it is because it involves other people, but I had called Jim Valiant and I was all bent out of shape. And I said, dude, I need to vent to you. I want to talk to you in 20 minutes. He said, okay. I said, basically, I need a shrink at this point. Come to find out, I was the complete asshole in the equation. And so when I got on the phone with Jim, I said, well, I'm the dumbass here. That's all. I was wrong. So far, so what if I'm wrong? Does that make me a horrible human? No. You know what would make me a horrible human? Digging in when I know I'm wrong, being dishonest with myself, being dishonest with others, but being wrong doesn't do it. Mark, you're somebody, and this is why I like and respect you so much. In my experience with you, you are very, very quick to acknowledge when you're mistaken. You don't dig in your heels. You just say, yeah, I was wrong. That's it. We're all wrong at times. Has that always been a habit for you? Did you have to cultivate it? What led you to cultivate it? Expound upon this, please.
I think I have always had that trait where I think I did force myself into it, though, because I told you before, when I was younger, I was growing into something I didn't like, right? I was violent, and I was becoming sort of like a hood. Not the way you were, but like, somebody who was like respected for being violent and started to get my self-esteem by rolling over somebody. You know what I mean? Instead of being milder, taking a step back, listening more than talking. And somewhere around 12 or 13, I decided that I needed to change because I was being an asshole and it wasn't winning friends and influencing people, and I wasn't happier for it. So I decided that I had to shift around a bit and be a little bit more amenable, and that turned into, being able to introspect. And then acting, of course, if you take acting seriously, it becomes a personal spiritual journey for you, because as you're acting, you're learning to break away a lot of false narratives that you believed and peel off a lot of masks that you wore in public to get down to what's really you. And that requires a lot of, if you do it right, a lot of self-honesty and the capacity to say, I don't know, or I was wrong, because you're changing. It's the only way you change.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Christopher Smith, Ian Gilmore first says it's a habit to be cultivated. And Christopher Smith says it takes high self-esteem. And I agree to an extent with Christopher Smith, but I will say that Nathaniel Branden talked about self-esteem and reciprocal causation. Basically, that if to cultivate self-esteem, you have to take actions to build your self-confidence, to build your self-respect. And the more self-esteem you have, the easier those things become. So in this case of honesty, yeah. I would argue that the honesty has to come first, at least a little bit. Well, maybe not. It's difficult to say, because maybe a little bit of self-esteem leads to a little bit of honesty, leading to more self-esteem and more honesty. But either way, I think that they impact each other. I think virtuous behavior builds self-esteem, and self-esteem helps
Absolutely.
to reinforce
including
virtuous
Michael,
behavior.
including saying you're wrong, admitting that you're wrong, because the benefits of that are so unbelievable. They're so much higher than the detractions of ignoring it, digging your heels in, all the misery that causes you and other people. There's so many benefits from it that itself grows your self-esteem. It doesn't. People use humility as a virtue. I hate the concept of humility, because it means you're self-effacing. You put yourself down in the face of, your what you should be crediting yourself for. But admitting you're wrong also gives you a context, a personal context. I found that people who dig their heels in are oftentimes, they live in a little bit of a self-delusional world. They're a little self-aggrandizing, and part of that self-aggrandizing comes from having such a small sense of self, right? Small self-esteem. And when you admit you're wrong, you contextualize yourself, you recontextualize where you stand in the world. And that's so much more solid to me than pretending to be or feeling like you're something bigger than you are, or exactly where you are. And that's a pretty great feeling, to be honest with you.
Absolutely. So Zorro Dominis, and these are going to be the last two questions we can answer because it's about time to wrap up. But he says the honor system and the golden rule is all you need to know. Am I wrong? No, it's not all you need to know. I do think you're wrong. But I think that you need to know a lot more to sort of integrate your ethics and your belief system. And just as an example with the golden rule, I believe it was George Santayana, the philosopher, who said, do not do unto others as you would have them do unto you. They may not share your tastes.
Exactly.
So that's just one example of it that being inaccurate. Megan Ribbon says, someone close to me doesn't seem to love themselves no matter how many extraordinary moral things they do. Advice. I would ask, Megan, I'll discuss this more with you tomorrow, Megan, if you'd like, but it sounds like this person may be judging him or herself by irrational standards. So if you are expecting too much from yourself, or expecting the impossible from yourself, or judging by others, standards, then it doesn't matter how good you are, you're going to end up with a poor self-esteem. Mark, do you have anything to say in regard to Megan's question or Zorro?
No, I agree with your assessment of it, actually. Of what Megan's statement was.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Zorro Dominis, thank you for joining us today. And I would be happy if you will join us again. We're here Monday through Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the Rational Alternative channel. It's just we're out of time today. But thank you for your questions. They seem well thought out, and I'd be happy to address them at a later date. For Mark, thank you so much for being here with me today, brother. Appreciate it.
Right on.
And for everybody else, join us tomorrow, Capitalist Corner weekend. Join us Monday for Capitalist Corner, Everyday Ethics, Crime, Corrections, and Culture. And until all that happens, please be ethical.